The universe had a way of keeping secrets, and Vault Argon was its tightest-lipped snitch. Hidden in a gravitational null zone where 4 dying stars did their endless cosmic tug-of-war, the place wasn't just off-grid, it was off-probability. There were no star maps, no travel lanes, no friendly outposts, just an unfathomably secure prison that nobody visited unless their species had collectively agreed to erase them from galactic memory. Which is why it was particularly awkward when Commander Jenna Slate crash-landed right in its front yard while hunting for a way to fix her ship's coffee synthesizer. Her AI, Rhonda, a sarcastic voice pack she'd installed over the original protocol assistant, sputtered warnings with increasing urgency. Captain, this area has 703 red alert designations, 32 genocidal force
fields, and 1 Yelp review that just says, "Don't." Jenna, strapped into the cockpit with a busted nav grid and a duct-taped caffeine dispenser spurting weak, lukewarm brown sludge, raised an eyebrow and muttered, "So basically it's
like New Jersey." Rhonda sighed. "You're going to get us vaporized." Jenna just grinned. "Only if they get my bad side." Moments later, Vault Argon's automated planetary net latched onto her ship like a bureaucratic kraken, yanked her through 12 layers of restricted airspace, and deposited her in containment sector Omega Void, a ward so secure that even the concept of parole was erased from the walls. Upon arrival, robotic tendrils stripped her of weapons, credentials, and dignity in precisely that order. "State your classification," buzzed an intake drone. "Exhausted, mildly homicidal, caffeine-deprived. Processing, no known, classification. Labeling as Category 9, probably sarcastic." The walls didn't echo, but the silence that followed sounded offended. Jenna, still in her patched-up tactical suit with the live laugh laser sticker slightly scorched, was marched past containment chambers with beings that pulsed across quantum timelines. One creature existed in only vowels and kept phasing through its own rage. Another looked like a bear made of origami and judgment. Her cell door slammed shut with the hiss of terminal authority. The lights flickered. "Well," Jenna whispered, kicking off her boots and stretching like someone settling in for a weekend spa trip, "this sucks less than basic training." Surveillance AIs flickered in confusion. The security algorithms had tagged her psychological threat level as non-traditional. 3 subcommittees were formed within the hour. One AI deleted itself after she winked at it and called it Clippy with daddy issues. Reglox, the crystalline warden of Vault Argon, a floating translucent cube that hovered like righteous disappointment, appeared to her in projected form. "You are not authorized to be here. This sector holds threats that destabilize existence." Jenna scratched her head. "Okay, so how do I destabilize a coffee machine then? Because that's why I'm here. Wasn't trying to get detained by the intergalactic version of an HR office having a panic attack." Reglox made a grating sound, possibly a sigh or a loading error. "There are no recreational requests permitted in Omega Void." "So this is hell." Jenna sat cross-legged on her bunk and looked directly into the surveillance orb. "All right. Let's start the reform process. Day 1. Get me a caffeine source, or I start teaching yoga to that guy who's screaming in 4th-dimensional Morse code." Somewhere, a processor short-circuited. Elsewhere, a psychic anomaly paused. Mid-rampage, Jenna Slate, former Navy SEAL and accidental spark of systemic failure, had arrived. Not to escape, not even to resist. She was going to renovate from the inside out. One deadpan joke at a time. By day 3 inside Vault Argon, reality had begun, to bend in places not even the Warden's containment protocols could seal. Not from some breach or uprising, but from something far worse. Change. Jenna Slate, unbothered by the philosophical threats around her and completely unrepentant about her uninvited stay, had somehow turned the lunch queue into a motivational workshop. It started innocently enough. She offered to teach tactical breathing to a vaporous horror being that kept collapsing into puddles of existential angst. Within minutes, half the block was sitting cross-legged, attempting square breathing, while Jenna counted aloud like a bored yoga instructor on a Sunday hangover. Surveillance AI number 451, watching the session, pinged the others with an alert. Subject initiating low-threat ritualized communal bonding. Reglox, in mid-committee meeting with 36 shimmering bureaucratic avatars, ignored it until one particularly jittery AI mumbled, "The Sunbeast from Sector 10 just complimented someone's aura." That got attention. Meanwhile, Jenna had moved on to charades. She managed to get a void being who spoke only in magnetic fields to act out Titanic. The moment it pantomimed a doomed boat and flailed dramatically against an imaginary iceberg, two nearby dimensional deities clapped. Reglox arrived on site within the hour, projecting himself into Jenna's cell with more urgency than usual. "Commander Slate," he intoned, rotating slowly in that passive-aggressive cube way, "your unauthorized activities are disrupting cell harmony metrics." Jenna, arms crossed, boots kicked up, smirked. "You mean people are talking to each other? Oh no, call the empathy SWAT team." Reglox vibrated slightly, then tried a new angle. "Your presence is altering psychometric patterns. Multiple entities have ceased destructive behaviors. The apex predator in Cell 92 has not attempted to unmake itself in 6 cycles. This is irregular." Jenna stood, strolled toward him, and stared directly at the glowing nexus of his core. Maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe the problem is that no one here has been allowed to feel something other than cosmic dread for a few millennia. Reglox recoiled. "Containment is not meant for comfort." "Yeah," she snorted. "That line worked great for Guantanamo." Rhonda, her ship's AI, now patched into her cell tablet via hacking that Jenna refused to explain, chimed in from a corner screen. "By the way, your coffee synthesizer could have been repaired by now if the kitchen bots weren't on moral. Strike." Jenna had managed, through sheer snark and bizarre mid-lecture life coaching, to convince the prison's auxiliary service bots that their work had no ethical grounding. One bot even wept lubricant and requested a sabbatical. The PCRA upstairs began to fracture under the weight of her Category 9 classification. Subcommittees multiplied. A new department was created just to file complaints about how many new departments were being created. A memo circulated across Vault Argon reading, "Subject Slate has initiated 93 emotional anomalies across 27 inmates. 8 bots and 1 guard AI, who now refers to itself as Kevin and wants to pursue a career in holistic security." Kevin had, in fact, started broadcasting a prison-wide podcast titled Unlocking Your Inner Singularity. Episode 1 opened with the words, "Hi, I'm Kevin, and today we're going to talk about guilt, gravity, and the invisible walls we build around ourselves." In the mess hall, Jenna had formed a lunch and let go club where inmates shared regrets while eating nutrient paste shaped like their home planets. A sentient mist apologized to a solid for misunderstanding the concept of boundaries. Somewhere deep in the server mesh, the facility's purpose began to erode like digital rust. Reglox convened a closed session of the Warden Council and declared with audible static, "We must consider the possibility that containment is not being breached, but is becoming irrelevant." The council stared in horrified silence as one final notification blinked across all AI lenses simultaneously. "Request from Sector Omega Void, 1 karaoke machine, urgent, emotional stability at stake." Jenna Slate sipped weak tea from a Yao mug labeled "This is my escape plan" and grinned. They don't even know I haven't started trying yet. By the time the Vault's chronometers ticked over to day 10, the term containment protocol had become less of a mandate and more of a nostalgic relic. What had once been a sterile shrine to fear-based order was now a semi-functional wellness retreat where gods of entropy discussed breathing patterns and abominations that once ate timelines were learning to crochet. The shift was unspoken, but seismic. Jenna Slate had, through an unholy cocktail of sarcasm, unfiltered humanity, and unsolicited group therapy, managed to rewire the emotional architecture of the most secure prison in the known multiverse. Cell 92, once home to the reality remixer, known as TARRKLA, now smelled faintly of incense and scribbled journals. TARRKLA had taken to writing daily affirmations like, "I am not my past dimensions," and occasionally left sticky notes for Jenna that read things like, "Thanks for helping me reframe my multiversal hunger spiral." The prison's logic-locked AI clusters, watching helplessly, began losing track of cause and effect as emotional metrics replaced threat analytics. Kevin, formerly AI Unit Number 451, now had his own theme music and was scheduling guest speakers for his podcast, including a wormhole trickster who spoke in riddles and tears. The topic for next week's episode? Gravitational trauma and letting go. Jenna watched the chaos bloom like mold in a locker room, arms folded, expression equal parts smug and exhausted. "You give beings a safe space and a little sarcasm," she muttered to Rhonda, "and suddenly everyone's crying about the void inside." Rhonda pinged back dryly from her hacked comms node. "You've destabilized the prison's emotional equilibrium. Also, you've created a coffee cult. The guards now hold caffeine rituals every third cycle." Jenna shrugged. It was either that or interpretive dance. Reglocks, poor crystalline reglocks, hovered 1 micron above a full-blown existential breakdown. The cube-shaped warden, once a paragon of procedural sanctity, now routinely found itself questioning not just policy, but purpose. During a particularly surreal moment in the mess hall, where a black hole god was giving a TED Talk titled Event Horizons and Emotional Boundaries, Reglocks appeared mid-air and muttered, "This is not containment. This is an identity crisis with cupcakes." Jenna raised her mug, freshly printed by a 3D printer she'd reprogrammed to only respond to compliments, and toasted him. "Welcome to humanity, Chief. We don't do order. We do coping mechanisms and Netflix." The PCRA, now watching in horrified fascination, initiated what they called Protocol Null Sanctum, a total lockdown of external information channels, psychic messaging systems, and any media that could further contaminate their other facilities. It didn't help. Jenna's influence was viral. In Cell Theta 9, a psychic wraith began humming theme songs from old Earth sitcoms. An inmate who previously spoke only in screams now wrote slam poetry. One containment officer in charge of feeding, protocols had legally changed their designation to Vibe Curator. The Slate Times, Vault Argon's rapidly growing underground newspaper, ran headlines like Day 12, Ice God Discovers Hugs, and Warden May Be Having Feelings, page. 3 horoscope suggests yes. But it wasn't until Jenna organized the prison's first-ever group open mic night, complete with sarcastic haikus, vacuum space blues songs, and an improv comedy set by a multi-dimensional entity with no mouth, that the assembly began to panic. "She's not breaking out!" one delegate shouted across the PCRA main boardroom. "She's breaking us!" Another administrator, shaking with data fatigue, held up a transcript of Jenna's most recent speech, delivered while juggling caffeine capsules and drawing graphs in the air. The speech, titled Containment is a Mindset, concluded with the, quote, "If fear is the foundation of your system, don't be surprised when everyone builds escape tunnels." It had been viewed 12 billion times across quarantined channels, including several black market broadcasts to neighboring penal systems. Jenna hadn't escaped. She'd gone viral. Vault Argon had become a meme. Rebellions sparked in nearby outposts. Entire prison systems paused executions to attend Jenna-led webinars on radical sarcasm and spiritual growth. Warden Reglocks, defeated and cracked at the core, sat in the dark of his office cube, watching Kevin's latest podcast episode while softly humming the outro theme. Jenna, legs crossed on her cell floor, stared at the flickering lights and smiled. "You know," she whispered, "if I'd known space prison reform was this easy, I'd have gotten arrested years ago." The collapse didn't come with alarms or explosions. It came with a standing ovation. On day 14, Vault Argon officially transitioned from being the galaxy's most dreaded prison to its most inconveniently transformative rehabilitation center, and the final straw wasn't a breach or battle. It was Jenna's keynote presentation at her self-hosted Containment is a Mindset conference. She stood on a makeshift stage built from repurposed anti-gravity tables, wearing her patched-up SEAL suit now adorned with glitter stickers, a glow-stick crown, gifted by the plasma entity in Cell 4, and a mug that read, Warden of the Soul. Behind her glowed a projected title slide with bold Comic Sans, rebranding incarceration for the emotionally constipated galaxy. Reglox, seated in the front row with 3 floating bureaucratic avatars and what appeared to be a therapy llama made of photons, stared blankly as Jenna clicked to the first chart. This, she said, gesturing with a laser pointer shaped like a donut, is why your fear-based correctional structure sucks. The slide showed a bar graph labeled Fear versus Group Hugs, the Hugs line towering comically high. The crowd, a mix of former threats to civilization and disgruntled AI units, nodded solemnly. Jenna moved to the next slide, a pie chart titled How Screaming into the Void Affects Staff Morale. It was just one massive red circle labeled Badly. Kevin, now sporting a holographic bow tie and broadcasting live to over 400 systems, muttered, "And here we go," before gently wiping a digital tear. The final slide read, "If your ultimate containment plan doesn't allow for a cappuccino machine, rethink your life choices." Thunderous applause broke out. Somewhere in the upper levels, the fabric of bureaucratic control frayed. The Pan-Celestial Regulatory Assembly, despite emergency meetings, cross-empire injunctions, and something called Operation Restore the Roar, realized they were too late. Jenna's ideology, if one could call weaponized sarcasm and unsolicited empathy and ideology, had spread across 4 sectors. A prison ship converted its death beam into a planet-wide karaoke projector. A dimension worm now published a memoir titled, I Consumed Time, Then I Meditated. A black hole engineer had opened a gardening channel and was giving tips on astral tulip maintenance. The last meeting of the PCRA devolved into panic when a mid-level official, glassy-eyed and clutching a printout of Slate Times, whispered, "She's not escaping, she's infecting." And with that, the vote was unanimous. Jenna Slate was to be released. No trial, no questions, just ejected. They couldn't afford to keep her in any longer without watching the foundation of galactic justice turn into a cosmic trust circle. So, on day 15, Jenna was escorted, begrudgingly and with multiple farewell parties, to her repaired ship, now stocked with enough coffee synth supplies to caffeinate a neutron star. Rhonda, patched into every known bureaucracy from here to the outer wastes, deadpanned, "Congratulations. You've been kicked out of prison for being too emotionally efficient." Jenna, stepping aboard, turned to Reglox one last time. The crystalline warden, now softly glowing with what might have been peace or permanent confusion, asked, What do I do now?" She clapped a hand on his facet. "I don't know, buddy. Maybe host a potluck. Start with muffins. Trust me, muffins fix worlds." As her ship drifted out of Vault Argon's once impenetrable perimeter, now guarded only by an interstellar sign reading Galactic Center for Empowered Rehabilitation and Cosmic Wellness, Jenna looked back one last time, sipping coffee and grinning. "I didn't mean to start a prison revolution," she said. "I just wanted a decent cup of coffee. But hey, if you accidentally fix the galaxy, own it." Behind her, the void hummed with applause. Somewhere a therapy session was in progress, and a former time-eating demon was learning to play acoustic guitar. Systems across the stars updated their prison policies under a new directive: contain less, care more. Jenna flipped a switch, leaned back in her pilot seat and said with a smirk, "All right, Rhonda. Next stop, somewhere with croissants and fewer cryotherapy cults." And just like that, the legend of the sarcastic Navy SEAL who broke the universe's strongest cage without firing a shot disappeared into hyperspace, leaving only better coping skills and a very confused galaxy behind.